is quite different than the culture at IBM or the culture in a university setting. And so what he tried to do is try to figure out, how does our culture match up with the kind of company or organization we choose to be? At Airbnb, they're all about relationships and gatherings and so forth. So you would have a happy hour area where everybody at 5 o'clock at Airbnb would go and get together and spend time together. You can imagine there's not a happy hour probably on a Navy submarine. It's a very different culture. But once again, what he's simply saying is culture is not a one-size-fits-all, but you want to make sure your culture also meshes well with the mission of the organization. Because to have dissonance there between the culture you're trying to create and the mission you're trying to achieve really will result in one of those two definitely not flourishing.
What are the ways that a team leader can create a successful culture?
I think trying to make sure that the people they bring into the organization actually believe in and are passionate about that particular endeavor. I'll give a University of Florida example. Obviously, there's the blocking, tackling certain skill sets somebody might need in an administrative position. But when somebody would ask me, Brian, what do I need to know or do well to be a great academic advisor? I would say, you need to love being with students. I mean, if you don't love being with students, all the skills in the world won't really work well. So when you interview that person and talk about culture, what are you passionate about? What gets you excited and motivated? And I give my own personal example. If I'm with bright, motivated young people, I'm happy. That's one of the reasons I chose to become an Army chaplain. I loved being an infantry platoon leader. I loved being a company commander. But to get promoted from captain to major, my next job was going to be doing operations orders, logistics reports, tracking communications and logistics issues. I was not going to be with young soldiers any longer. And so I knew that I was not going to fit in those new roles. That's when I decided if I became a chaplain in the military, it would keep me with young soldiers a lot longer. And so I try to tell people, follow your passions, because you're going to be detrimental to an organization and its culture if you try to fit into a role that doesn't fit your passions.
It's interesting because as a lawyer, we tend to think we can do everything well, and we can't, of course, right? But I think that I'm a bright person and I could probably learn to do certain things. However, my natural inclination is to be a visionary, to come up with new ideas, and but I like to have an implementer to take over and come up with the idea and have somebody there who can really implement the idea. In the past, though, I think I did too much of trying to take both roles on, and the implementation, I couldn't do both. Is
Sure.
The bottom line. Right. And as I've grown, I've started to realize that I'm not doing my team members a favor. I'm not doing my self a favor by not learning to delegate different tasks, particularly those that someone else can do better.
Sure. In delegation, it requires a couple things, Jeffrey. It requires humility, and it requires confidence in the people you've chosen. I've seen a lot of folks who are afraid to delegate, but I thought to myself, why are you afraid to delegate? Because this is the person you picked. Teddy Roosevelt often said, give a person a job and just get out of their way. And that's really great advice. And a lot of people are sometimes reluctant to heed it. But again, your organization will not grow if everybody's always looking over their shoulder, wondering, am I doing it the way the boss wanted me to? General Patton said, once again, don't tell a soldier how to do something. Tell him what needs to get accomplished and let that person go, and they'll surprise you with their ingenuity.
Well, how do you do that in the military when you have to have everybody functioning like a football team, really?
Sure.
A team, and it's like I'm the quarterback, and I have confidence in my linemen not to, let somebody in to run me over and knock me out of the game or whatever. So how do you accomplish that?
I'll give you two thoughts that come to mind. One, Jeffrey, is in the military, we are given task and purpose. That's two parts of a mission statement, task and purpose. If you just give somebody a task, that's not the most important part of the mission statement. It's the purpose. So in other words, if a commander says, here's your task and here's your purpose, it's okay to deviate from the task. You give that person flexibility because they understand the purpose they're trying to achieve. Also, we have a part of our paragraph op order called the commander's end state. In other words, once we're done with this mission, the end state is we will have achieved A, B, and C. So we give the leaders the ability to take the initiative to achieve A, B, and C, even if it's not really within the task that you gave that individual. So we also have the other component, which is great non-commissioned officers. That's the secret sauce for the U.S. military, is we have non-commissioned officers who really take the orders and execute the mission. We have a phrase that says, NCOs make it happen. And the reason why our military has always been successful is we have great people who understand how to take orders but execute the mission within the commander's intent. They understand the commander's end state, and we give them the flexibility to be ingenious and take initiative within that end state.
So within a law firm context, we always want to have a certain standard and quality of service. Is it challenging then to give people the flexibility to figure out how to get it done when like you say, purpose, the purpose is deliver exceptional service on a consistent basis and help our clients through difficult times, okay?
Sure. Well, one way a commander might do that is says, I will underwrite. I will underwrite good initiative. I will not underwrite poor judgment. So once again, a poor judgment could be you really weren't doing all you could to achieve the commander's end state. That's hard to underwrite as a commander, and you probably shouldn't. But you should underwrite good initiative. It's a new approach to achieve that end state. But as soon as you start to not underwrite good initiative, then no one takes good initiative. And the commander should not be surprised when the end state isn't achieved.
Well, it's, something that I'm passionate about is trying to develop, to be as good a leader as I can. And it's very, I get excited about reading leadership books and, read it and I go, oh yeah, that's what I need to do. And then you get into the implementation of it and the actual practice of it. And you really need to have everybody rowing in the same direction to make it work.
Yes, and that's what Commander's End State does. Commander's End State says, we want to achieve X and Y by the end of this initiative. And so you can imagine everybody's rowing in the same direction, but what if you row in that direction and there's a dam? Okay, well, I can't row in that direction anymore, but I know the end state. I know where I'm supposed to be. So the commander won't be upset that I'm deviating direction for a moment. I'm going to get around this roadblock, and then I'm going to continue to row and row. But somebody who really understands initiative would say, wow, I came to a block in the road. I can't move. I shouldn't deviate from this direction. This is not going to be well received. A commander who's worth his or her salt will say, the obstacle was there, none of us knew it, but you understood the end state, and you found a way around the obstacle to achieve the goal.
I read this great book, The Obstacles Are the Answer. And
there we go.
You know that book?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, anyhow. And it deals with, so in our law practice, what we want to do is have, bright people who have good instincts and can do what you're describing, which is,
yes,
because there's always obstacles, right?
Sure. Good instincts would be what John Maxwell describes as the law of intuition. This is someone who seems to have the ability to look around the corner, kind of anticipates the challenge. As Wayne Gretzky would say, he skates not to where the puck is, but where the puck is going to be. And once again, when I talk about the laws of leadership, I talked about John Maxwell and the 21 leadership laws. I think it's important for folks to review those and understand, I can't be good at 21 things, but I sure hope that I have members of my team that they've got those 2 leadership tools in their toolbox. And I've got these 5 in my toolbox. And that's why delegation becomes very, very helpful. You turn to people who on your team can utilize those leadership laws well, and having all 21 on your team makes for a really, really effective situation.
Well, I'm glad you said that, so I don't have to learn to be great at all 21. I just
we don't have time.
I don't have time. And it's fascinating because you've devoted your life really to learning about leadership and ethics. Talk a little bit about how ethics and leadership coexist.
Sure. Well, in my leadership class that I teach, and in my ethics class I teach, I have a common book across both of those disciplines that talks about moral courage. And the challenge with moral courage is, like any other muscle or any other skill, it needs to be cultivated and developed. So it's interesting when I teach my class, I tell my students I'm going to give them 2 gifts in the ethics class. And I'd encourage you to think about this and have your listeners as well. I tell my students, by the time you're done with this course, you'll be able to answer the following 2 questions effectively. Question number 1 is, how would you handle an ethical dilemma in our industry? And question number 2 is, give me an example of where you've shown moral courage. For the students, they can stumble through question 1 a little bit, but they realize they've got to get a better answer. They've got to get a process to identify and handle ethical dilemmas. But Jeffrey, it's so surprising how many students can't give 1 example of where they've shown moral courage. Now, they can often say, I can give you a couple examples where I wish I had shown moral courage. But moral courage is what I call the gas in the tank of a really, really effective car or a tank, for example. And so I try in my class to also help students develop moral courage, because that's what you need to actually take an ethical dilemma and actually confront it and deal with it effectively.
We talk about that a lot in our office, that our true North Star is service to our clients, and that we use the golden rule as an example. It's like nowadays it's very common when you communicate with a business that there's some, I would say a person answers the phone and makes you feel like they don't really care. They're going through the routine.
Sure.
They aren't warm and welcoming. And, we call our receptionist, the ambassador of first impressions.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about how important you think that is in, creating a successful business environment, to have everybody on the team create, an exceptional environment where your clients, in our case, become raving fans.
Well, I've heard people often say, people might not remember what you said or how you said it, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And that's a really, really powerful idea. In other words, every interaction, how's that person going to feel having spent any amount of time with me? And really, you can't afford for that frontline person to have a bad day. As an Army company commander and as an Army chaplain, I would take my chaplains aside and say, you know what, you're an Army chaplain, you're not allowed to have a bad day, at least not in the eyes of the soldiers, because you are a source of motivation. You are a source of inspiration. If you're having a bad day, talk to me. Come talk to me, or if you're having a bad day, just make sure that you are not going to be a front-facing person until you find a way to get over whatever you're dealing with. But the first person who answers the phone in your business, they can't afford to have a bad day. They can't say, hello, hi, can we help you? I mean, at that point, you've already lost the battle with that individual. So once again, you can't have a good day every day, but you can't afford to have a bad day if you're in that front-facing position with clients.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's so important because we're in a highly competitive space, and it's like when somebody calls, we may, we've invested a lot to get that person to call.
Yes.
Okay, it may be, that we met somebody and had a conversation with them and had made a good impression, and they go, oh, that's the kind of lawyer I want to have. And then when they have the need, they give us a call. It may be in marketing as far as, advertising, things like that. However, whatever the circumstances are, I try to impress on whoever is answering the phone, that call may have cost. We had to invest $5,000 to make that phone ring for that case, and you can't be casual about answering it in a less than focused manner.
And I do think one skill set that is often not described as a skill set is the skill to listen. People talk about communication skills. Listening is one of those skills, and Stephen Covey would say, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think that's a very important thing for anybody when the customer walks in or a new student walks in, or as a chaplain when somebody walks in. I need to seek first to understand that person, and if I do that, and that person understands I've been receptive, they'll be really interested in hearing from me in the ways I can help them out.
It's amazing. When did Stephen Covey wrote 7 Habits?
Probably, I think, in the early 80s.
Yeah.
I think it probably was early, maybe 86, 87.
And what's amazing is how relevant it is today.
It is. Well, as a chaplain, I would go to scriptures and say there's nothing new there's nothing new under the sun. Which is why I love teaching ethics, because I think it's a timeless skill that regardless of technology, AI, bioethics, etc., at the end of the day, ethical decision-making comes down to identifying dilemmas that we confront. I have a book that I work with, and happy to talk about that if you'd like me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's a book I use called the Business Ethics Field Guide. And don't let the word business throw you off, but the way this book got put together is I had the lead author, a good friend of mine, he would have his employees and also his students type up a 3 or 4 page dilemma they confronted at some point in their career. After teaching MBA students for a whole decade, he had over 500 case studies. And somebody asked him a magic question. I call it a magic question. He asked, Dr. Agel, how many different kinds of ethical dilemmas are there? Now, he'd never had this question before, so he had a Ph.D. student take all 500 case studies and said, I have a project for you. I want you to please place these in like buckets. Give me a taxonomy. And after doing this analysis, they identified 13 distinct ethical dilemmas. Now, when I heard that, Jeffrey, my Army brain thought 13 battle drills. In other words, if you can teach somebody to identify the dilemma they're in, and you can give them a prescribed course of action, they're a lot more confident now engaging. Imagine the Gator defense. If we said, you know what, Tennessee, they run 13 plays on offense. And if we can see, hey, this is play number 5, we are then ready for that particular issue. But when I tell my students there are 13 distinct ethical dilemmas, you can immediately see the courage build. Hey, I can learn to use 13 tools. And when you do that, guess how many dilemmas there are in the field of law? There are 13 in the field of medicine. There are 13.
Give us one or two.
Sure, of course.
Brian, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, a great example would be ethical dilemma number 2 in this book is made a promise and the world has changed. That happens all the time in our personal life and professional life. As an Army chaplain, imagine me promising my young son a weekend to the beach with his friends, but I have a soldier gets in a car wreck. And my commander wants me to go to the hospital to be with this injured soldier. Well, I've made a promise and the world has changed. I've got to find a way to balance these two competing interests. And that's where the idea of moral imagination comes in. So in that example, Jeffrey, my students always fall in the trap of, well, you have to tell your commander no and not go with the soldier, or you have to tell your son no. I said, no, my commander really wants a chaplain there. They said they want me there, but imagine if I went to my boss and said, hey, sir, I've got a family event. How about I call another chaplain I know well and send her to the hospital? Would that be okay? Hey, Brian, I don't care if it's you or some other chaplain. I just want a chaplain there with the soldier. But made a promise and the world has changed would be one example. Another would be loyalty. And I see this is a big challenge right now where someone is asking you to be loyal to them, but they're asking you to be loyal to them maybe at the expense of loyalty to an organization or the organization's values. Another example would be intervention. You see something that's wrong. Should you be the one to intervene? How do you intervene? Another example would be suspicion but not enough evidence. You smell smoke and you think something's wrong, but maybe nothing is wrong here. And how you investigate that or how you report it can be very, very challenging.
So how would you go about it?
Well, I'll give you an example, but notice I didn't say one of the 13 dilemmas is stealing.
Okay.
One is lying.
Okay.
One is being deceitful. Mm-hmm. Many people, I think, in these days misunderstand bad behavior with poor ethics. No, that's bad behavior. Ethics is really ethical dilemmas.
So it's not the Ten Commandments.
Not at all. I mean, those are not ethical dilemmas. Exactly. But suspicion with not enough evidence. The first step in every single ethical dilemma is gather the facts. And how you gather the facts can be very, very important. I had a colleague at work, for example, who told me that he had gotten a job offer and he was going to be moving on with his family, but he didn't want anybody at work to know yet. I said, hey, sounds fine. Congratulations. Happy for you. You'll be the one to share the news. 2 days later, he came into my office and he was upset and angry. And Brian, how could you tell people that I got this job? You promised that you weren't going to share with anyone. And I said, well, I didn't. Well, you must have. I only told you. I said, yeah, but you told me like 10 feet away from an open office door. And then he realized, wow, it wasn't you. It must have been somebody overheard the discussion. So again, suspicion, but not enough evidence. And how you handle those delicate matters are really, really important.
Yeah, in a business sense, a business setting, when an employee has done, you think the employee has done something that you wouldn't approve of, that would apply, right?
Yes, and you shouldn't rush in with an assumption. I'll give you an example about how I work with students on the blocking and tackling of ethical decision making. Many students jump to conclusions very, very quickly. And that's kind of our human nature, to take in our information and to try to make quick decisions because sometimes they're of the essence. But I give my students the example, imagine someone abroad had a few drinks and then got in a car and hit a pedestrian. Did this person hit the pedestrian voluntarily or involuntarily? Now, almost all students jump to the word voluntarily because the person was drinking. And I'll say, drinking what? Oh, my goodness. We're drinking right now. This is water. Right. We're having water. But the students say, well, I just assumed it was alcohol. Yes, I know this is the problem with many ethical. We rush in with information we think we know, and we don't take a step back and gather all the facts. What if I had said the person had one glass of wine, but the person was jaywalking? Now, who do you really think is responsible for the situation? Well, Dr. A, this is all new information. No, it's not new information. It's unknown information. You didn't take the time to gather the facts, because gathering facts and making assumptions based upon those facts is really important before you then jump in to try to develop courses of action to address the dilemma. So gather facts, make reasonable assumptions, and then develop courses of action. We do that in the military. That's how we do the military decision-making process. Gather facts, make assumptions based upon those facts, and develop courses of action for the boss. I tell my young students, you're not going to make the call most of the time for an ethical dilemma. You're going to identify one and go to your boss and say, hey, here are a couple different ways I think we could solve this. You're the boss. Which one should we go and pursue?
You know, that's great, because we're developing a strategy and actually a forum, right, that we ask our, if a team member sees a problem, they're supposed to identify the problem that they perceive, then come up with 3 possible solutions, and then identify which one they think is probably the best solution.
Hey, I say never go to your boss with a problem unless you have a couple ideas on how to solve it. You're the one who identified it. You're the one in the trenches. And we saw this in Iraq as a great example. Nobody anticipated IEDs. We just didn't think we would have IEDs. And one way that IEDs go off is sometimes they sense heat, the heat of an engine. And we had a soldier develop what we ended up calling the Rhino. The Rhino was these glow plugs that are in the engines of the vehicles. They get really, really hot. And so the soldier says, let's put a bunch of glow plugs about 10 feet in front of our vehicle. So there's almost like the feeling of a fire, something very, very hot in front of the vehicle. And the IED, if it was sensing heat, would blow up in front of the vehicle versus under the vehicle. That was something that was figured out by a young 19-year-old kid, and it saved lots of lives. But that's where the good ideas come from. They come from the trenches, and I promise you, you need to have a way for those ideas to bubble up to people who can then make this good idea go out across the organization.
Well,
It saved a lot of lives.
I've been talking with Dr. Brian Ray, and with your permission, Dr. Ray, we're going to have you back for part 2 because we have a second guest on here, and I'm so enthralled with our interview, I feel like we're only scratching the surface.
Well, I think part 2 could be a great discussion on building on the idea of the 13 ethical dilemmas, how we develop moral courage to identify and address those 13 dilemmas. It would be a great show.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much, Brian Ray. This has been a absolutely fascinating and eye-opening discussion for me. I hope everyone else enjoyed it. We're going to take a 3-minute break, and then we're going to be back on Meldon Law and Friends. And thank you again, Dr. Ray, for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Go Gators.
Go Gators!
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. Look what you have done to my truck.
Excuse me, it's your fault, it's not my fault.
Yes, it is your
No,
fault.
it's not, no,
I
it's
am
not.
calling Jeffrey Meldon from Meldon Law.
So I'm gonna call Jeffrey, my husband.
Meldon Law, this is Jeffrey speaking.
This crazy lady here, this crazy lady, he might...
New client?
Yes, but this one might be a little tricky. When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. We still hear it. The sound of victory. The joy of being part of something great. And while things may not be the same right now, we haven't gone anywhere. If you bleed orange and blue, then Meldon Law is the firm for you.
We are here at the University of Florida, where Albert and Alberta are competing in the Gator penalty shootout. Albert is ready to stop the shot at all costs. What a disaster! Luckily, Meldon Law is the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. If you have suffered any injury, do not worry because Meldon Law is going to help you with your recovery. Meldon Law doesn't back down until they reach their goal.
Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down.
And I was in an accident. Someone ran a red light and hit me, and I was hurt. You don't know where to turn. Luckily, I called Jeffrey. These big insurance companies, they don't want you to win. They truly don't. But Jeffrey and his firm and the people that work here, they just really fight for you. You call the law offices of Jeffrey Meldon because you're going to need help, and they will help you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. Doing very well. How about yourself? Perfect. Nothing in particular at all. I am happy to talk about whatever. See, it's 4:44 right now.
Welcome back to Meldon Law and Friends. What a great show we've had so far, and it's going to continue right now. Our guest is Rayven Crisafulli. Did I get that right?
You did. It looks a lot more complicated than it really is. But Rayven Crisafulli, honestly, I take any variation of it, though.
I love it. And so, Rayven, you have a very interesting background. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you've done in the past and where you're going?
Absolutely. I'd be delighted to. So my background is in events. I am an event planner, and I went to UF for my undergraduate degree, got my degree in event management, and then I did corporate events for 8 years. I also have a wedding planning business that is still part of my daily job description. And I'm also back at the University of Florida earning my Ph.D. and teaching event management. So some say I'm mildly obsessed, but events are something that just really I'm very passionate about.
Now, I understand you do weddings.
Yes, sir, I do. I'm actually at the Ritz-Carlton, Amelia Island today. We had a tasting for one of our brides, so that was lots of fun. Always a good time up here eating good food.
You know, I'm going to the Ritz-Carlton in 2 weeks. For a legal conference. The Ritz-Carlton in Amelia Island is one of my favorite places, and I've been to some weddings there. What a great place for a wedding, right on the ocean.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful property, and I hosted corporate events just next door at the Omni Amelia Island for 8 years, so I love this area. It's just so beautiful.
I want to hear a little bit about how's this wedding going to come off. Tell it, where is it? Is it going to be inside, outside, all that? And so, are you moving? Do we have the ceremony in one place and then another? Tell us how it's going to happen.
Absolutely. So it's pretty classic for a Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island wedding. We have a outdoor ceremony out on the lawn. Background is going to be the beach. They're going to move out over to cocktail hour, which is going to be outdoors. Then they're going to go into this beautiful ballroom for the reception. I have just the most amazing couple. They are so low key. They just want to have a good party. And I think it's really going to be fun. Mom, actually, the mother of the bride, okayed a beer burrow today for cocktail hour, which for those of you who aren't familiar, it is where we actually bring in a donkey who has these lovely saddlebags that have ice and beer and tequila. So that is going to be what we call one of our surprise and delight moments during the cocktail hour.
Wow. Are there any other surprise and delight moments we can share?
We actually, today was the first day of the design phase of our planning. We plan in phases. So we start with all the core logistics, getting all the main vendors locked in. Then we spend a little bit of time on design. And then the last phase is actually executing and wrapping up all the loose ends before wedding day. So at this point, that's the main surprise and delight. But my couple's really cool. They're really into baseball. They're really into golf. So I think we're going to have some fun add-ons in there as well.
Wow. How many folks are going to be attending this particular wedding?
This particular wedding, we're going to have about 200 attendees. The budget for this one, I think, is going to exceed 100,000. So it's going to be a fun shindig.
Yeah, well, as a father of the bride in the past, I can tell you $100,000 doesn't go very far.
It does not. 100% does not. And when I talk to my students in class at UF about budgets for weddings, it's really funny to see their eyes just kind of get really big when I tell them, oh, if you wanted to have a boxed lunch that is a sandwich and a little side of pasta salad, that's going to cost you $45 minimum plus 25% service charge plus 7% tax. So it's a $50 sandwich. And that's just par for the course with, event food and beverage.
It's fascinating because I've always loved being a party planner myself. When I was in college, I was the social chairman and the rush chairman for my fraternity.
Love it.
And so it's in my DNA. As a matter of fact, going back even further, when I was 15 years old, my parents went to Europe and left me alone with my aunt, who was a degenerate gambler, and I set up a gambling casino, a little bit like Risky Business. And it was great. We made a ton of money. I figured out that it's always better to be the house.
It always is, 100%. And that's one of the fun things about hospitality, events, tourism, and everything. That's my background, and it's something a lot of my students say. They start off as business majors, and they're like, I like business. This is a lot of fun, but I need something more. I need, something a little bit more dynamic. And then they discover events and everything that can entail. We have at our department at UF, a board member, like an industry advisor, who is the GM of Caesars Hotel in Las Vegas. And the Formula One is doing a race out in Vegas next year, and they're doing some sort of special launch party at the Caesars. They've got a launch party going on, and the budget for the launch party is over $4 million. So it gives you a lot of fun stuff to play with.
Wow. Well, that's great. So tell me some of the most creative weddings you've been involved with.
Ooh, that's a fun one. So when I design weddings, my goal is to create an event that really showcases the love story of my couples. So it's a lot of nods back to what makes them unique. So if they're foodies, we do really fun food elements. We have custom, like welcome drinks that are champagne, and you can put fruit in it, and they're like in these fancy ice bowls. We've had one of my weddings last October was a Chinese American and Ghanaian American couple. So we had Ghanaian dancers come in and do a performance. Our bride changed out of the traditional wedding dress into a Ghanaian wedding dress. So lots of fun things like that really just speak to who our couples are.
So how do people get a hold of you? I say they have a wedding and they want to do a fabulous wedding. How do they get a hold of you?
So the easiest way to get a hold of me is through my website, so whitemagnoliaevents.com. We're also on Instagram if that's your preferred mode of communication. But yeah, that's how you can reach us.
Well, at Meldon Law, we frequently have events, grand openings for offices or for events. We took everybody over to the beach for 3 days, and our office manager, Nikki Hadaway, did an incredible job to put 45, 50 people together in a destination somewhere and have it all work out seamlessly for 3 days was a big project, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the amount of effort is always underestimated. For anybody who's new to events, you get into it and you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. And then you realize all the moving parts, everything that's changing. But honestly, I would get bored if my job was the same every day. I'm one of those people that can't do repetitive stuff. So I appreciate the challenges that pop up along the way. It keeps everything from getting monotonous for me.
So what do you do when a well thought out plan unravels?
You make a spur of the moment change. So one of the things I tell my students is you can know everything that we teach you in the textbook, but the most valuable thing that you're going to need as an event planner, and honestly, this is true in any business, is being able to think on your feet and make quick decisions. So I had a wedding one time where the bride was very particular about everything. Fair. And one of the groomsmen, he lost the pocket square for his tux, and the bride was having conniptions about it, basically. And so what we ended up doing is we went to the catering team and we said, okay, do you have a cream napkin that we can utilize for photos, so that way we don't have to Photoshop all of this in for all of the photos? And that's what we did. So it's always just finding very quick creative solutions to the most random problems ever. And granted, there's certain things that we can do. We can plan ahead. my groom was supposed to bring a laptop that we were going to run a presentation off of or something. He forgot it, and I knew he would, so I had extra laptops. So we have seen things a couple times, and we can kind of predict what may or may not go wrong and have plans in place. But truly, it all comes down to, let's just very quickly make a decision.
So do you have a rain plan for the wedding coming up?
Yes, we do. Rain plan would be indoors, which is not ideal. And truly, that's probably the most frustrating part for us as planners, because our mother of the bride, our bride, the groom, they have this vision, right? And they've been working towards this vision for over a year. And then we have to say, okay, you have to make a call on whether or not we're going to risk you getting rained on outside, or if we're just going to go ahead and bring it inside to be safe. That's truly a really challenging thing. And we can go above and beyond and get extra flowers and everything to make the inside feel more, beautiful, I guess. But yeah, I unfortunately, I can control a lot of things. The weather is not one of them.
I know when my daughter got married in 2014, we did the wedding at a historic building in Miami in the design district, and it had 5 stories, and it was an atrium. So it was beautifully set up for the wedding, and they actually had a garden on the rooftop, and we had the wedding all designed for the rooftop. And about 2 hours before the wedding, the wedding planner calls me. She says, "You got to make a call. The radar shows it's rain coming in, and we gotta set up and do it." Actually, it was about 2:00 in the afternoon for a 7:00 wedding is when we had to make the call. Yeah, it was a fairly early call. However, it was raining at the time. It was already raining. And they were, and that complicates it, right?
It really does. And a lot of the hotels are now putting clauses in their contracts that state that if you make the call to leave it outside and we have to move everything inside, there's a surcharge. So the hotels are trying to financially incentivize people to make the safer call. So that way, it doesn't come down to event staff to scramble to reset everything 30 minutes before a ceremony is supposed to start. But it's hard.
I know we had it so designed really cool where we'd start on the top floor and have the ceremony, and then after the ceremony move to the next floor down for cocktails and hors d'oeuvres, and then move down the next floor. We had a living room set up for the late night stuff, and then move down to the ground floor, and so people were going to be having all these it was a historic building. It was called the Moore Building down in the design district in Miami. And so anyhow, the fact is, though, because we had a really good planner working with us, the guests that came in, it went off seamlessly because we had a backup plan, and that made it happen, right? So that's the reason, that's one good reason why you want an experienced wedding planner, right?
Absolutely. Having an experienced event professional for any event is a massive asset. And not only can we help you walk through a rain backup plan or something like that, but, we have background knowledge that you may not have. We can look at a contract and say, "Ooh, there's something here that's going to bite you later. Let's mix this up." My husband's an attorney, so I remember going through contract law and everything with him when he was in law school, and I still love contracts. So anytime I get a hotel contract, I'm like, "Ooh, let's go look at it." But yeah, there's a lot of creative stuff that you can do with contracts that protect you, that give you additional leeway if something were to go wrong. And as an average person, you may not have that expertise, right? So aside from just being able to help you on site, the planning, having a planner for the planning part is very helpful. But what we tell clients, people in general, and I'm not saying this just because I'm an event planner, but there's 2 different types of wedding planning that we offer essentially. One is full service planning. And that's where we walk you through every stage of the planning process. The other one is where we come in and manage your wedding. So you've done all the booking, you've picked all your vendors, the flowers and everything. And we tie up all the loose ends, make sure you haven't overlooked anything. And we're there on the day of to put out fires, right? We want to make sure that not just our bride and groom, but all of their VIPs, the moms, the dads, the uncles, the sisters, the maid of honor. We don't want them running around having to put out fires, and saying, okay, well, we need a new, we have to sew this, or we have to go find a pocket square for so-and-so or whatever. That's our job. We want everybody to be able to relax and enjoy themselves. And that's part of what we do. Our services are what I would call experiential. So you don't just get a planner, you get an experience. And all of our content is geared towards that. It's not just, hey, we're going to walk you through the logistics, but we go one step beyond.
Well, I have to have you back on the show, Rayven. It's been such a wonderful experience. We're running out of time. However, White Magnolia Events, just Google it, right? And
yes,
you will
absolutely.
find White Magnolia Events. And I'll tell you, I so love and respect what you do. It's so important because events, when you dream of an event, you want it to come off perfectly. And having someone like Rayven around, she has a list of 100 things that have gone wrong in the past and knows what to do in the event that happens again. So
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Rayven Crisafulli. And I want to thank Crisafulli, right? Chris, is that how you say it? Rayven Crisafulli?
Crisafulli. But honestly, it's Italian, we're American, whatever. I would be absolutely delighted. In fact, one of my former students is on your team right now helping with some marketing outreach events. So I'd be delighted to help in any way that I can. And thank you again for the opportunity.